Thank you for visiting ChristopherMedia.net.
Every day, people experience mysteries that challenge the laws of nature, like enjoying a Coke Zero Sugar. It looks, sounds, and tastes delicious. But how does one explain the great taste if there are 0 calories and 0 sugar? Some mysteries are just too mysterious. Coca-Cola Zero Sugar, unbelievably delicious.
No TV binging session is complete without the unbelievably delicious 0-calorie taste of Coke Zero Sugar.
ChristopherMedia.net.
From Asthma Core Studios near Detroit, Michigan, it's Unregimented.
Gangsters, what's up, guys?
And now, here are your hosts.
Welcome to Unregimented number 296. I'm Chris.
I'm Aaron.
And I'm Rich.
And no more Mr. Mustache, huh?
Nope.
John Bolton survived over a year in Trump's administration.
That's like 7 in human years.
Yeah. He's eligible for tenure.
I was going to say, I think he might deserve an award, only I know full well that he deserves no awards. And I didn't understand who John Bolton was completely the first time around and how ridiculous it was to appoint him as ambassador, because the whole time, what were we being told when we were going into Iran the last time? Iraq. That nobody's interested in nation building and regime change and all this. That we're just going to go free the people, and then they're going to, elect their own leaders. Then we can go home celebrated. But I mean, that's what John Bolton was all about. That was like his thing, was overthrowing the Middle East, was essentially nation building. I mean, I don't know how you overthrow a government and not expect to do some nation building.
Well, not just the Middle East. He pretty much took that stand against North Korea too. He had some issues with Trump talking with Little Kim over there, and I mean,
I'm surprised that wasn't the straw that broke the Mustache's back.
Well, from what I understand, it was he wanted to take a hard line against Iran and all this stuff, and Trump was like, "No, let's talk." Which is, it's weird. I'm about to say this. I'm just going to preface that what I'm about to say with that Trump is the one that actually wanted to talk before actually bombing somebody.
Well, right, but yeah, Trump's the opposite problem. He's too friendly. What was the split over? Like the
sanctions on Iran. Trump wanted to ease them up, and Bolton didn't.
Oh, right. And then our drone getting shot down. Bolton is the one that told Trump we need to have an airstrike against Iran, and then Trump at the last minute pulled back, and apparently Bolton was making no bones about it in the Trump administration that he thought that was a pussy move, which is the kiss of death. You never agree or disagree with the emperor, no matter how little clothes he's wearing.
Yeah, I mean, he's shown that in the last 10 years. How long has he been president?
Yeah, a couple decades, I think.
That's what it feels like, everybody.
It's all
these
blurred.
last 3,000 years have just flown by.
Right. So John Bolton was too aggressive. I think in this case, I would agree that the sanctions seem to be working, at least under Obama. The sanctions were working. And then as soon as Trump steps in, he starts removing all these sanctions from Russia and from Iran as well, and they go right back to their old behavior. So I don't know. It doesn't, like, on one hand, it's like, oh, well, maybe this is a good thing. Maybe this is the silver lining in the Trump cloud. Like, at least he's not as aggressive as John Bolton. But I don't think it came down to a level of aggression as much as like you phrased it, Rich, that Trump was being a pussy. I think Trump. I think it's of the two parties, but overall,
it was a dick measuring contest. What, you disagree with me? Then you're fucking fired.
No, I don't think it was that. It was a philosophical difference.
Sure, but still, it's still disagreeing with the phrase Rich here. It's still disagreeing with the emperor, right?
Yeah. Well, isn't this how it's supposed to go? I mean, it's not to say that everything that Trump has suggested, John Bolton has pushed back on, and this is the first time that they parted ways. But it's clear after a year that he's not going to be effective. I mean, he should have probably quit anyway. He probably just feels like he's one of these now appointed babysitters. He's one of the last remaining adults in the room, quote unquote, and was staying out of some sense of duty. But yeah, fuck him either way.
Yeah,
I mean, your mustache is stupid, and you're a fucking chicken hawk.
Yeah, war doesn't solve everything.
Well, he joined the reserve, I think it was. I looked this up earlier. And trying to avoid being called in the draft, he decided to he joined the Army Reserve.
Okay. That's one way to get out of it.
Sure. I mean, it's I guess it's a step up from Bone Spurs. At least he was serving in some capacity.
Yeah, or moving to Canada, or whatever the hell you did back then.
But it just, checks the Warhawk box of hasn't actually served in combat. Check.
Yeah, I've never understood why they put people in those positions with no military experience.
Yeah, well, I mean, to be fair, yeah, he was heading up the NSA. That's strictly a military organization, although it does
the NSA, then what does he care about Iran for? Isn't the NSA supposed to spy on us? Isn't that what they're there for?
Or no, I'm sorry. He's not head of... I confused that. He's not head of the NSA. He is the National Security Advisor. I think there's a difference. Because the NSA is a relatively new... That's a post 9/11 organization. Mm-hmm. The Office of National Security Advisor goes back quite a ways, I guess. I have no idea. So I'm conflating the two. I'm seeing NSA and confusing the two things. So yeah, he was the National Security Advisor. So yeah, absolutely be advising him on things like Iran.
Oh,
I've never been a big fan of the man or his view of the world. But at the same time, it's like, who's Trump going to bring in to replace him?
Yeah.
It's almost like, if he was under Trump's, watchful eye and they could disagree, that's one thing. If someone comes in who's a fucking flatterer with a golden tongue and strokes fucking Trump's ego, God knows what he can get Trump to do.
Well, yeah, Trump, it's not likely that Trump's going to pick somebody competent and worthy of the job, especially with his resources dwindling, although he claims to have over a dozen people lined up ready to do this job. Frankly, I'd be surprised if he had a dozen people lining up to intern at the White House right now.
Yeah, no shit.
But, yeah. Well, think about it this way, though, because Trump, he's going to appoint whatever Yahoo. That's a done deal. That's not going to stop until Trump's out of office. John Bolton, though, if you look at who he is, as someone who is, well, let's face it, he wants to call it regime change, but it's even nation building is a tame word for it. It's building a fucking empire is what it is. It's something that we've said that we've put in our past and yet continue to try and do all over the world. Who is left amongst those Republicans? Are there still Republicans out there that are for going out and trying to overthrow tyrants in the world? I mean, at the time that John Bolton was ambassador, there was a whole troop of people that were surrounding George Bush and guiding his hand through this process of regime change. So, I mean, maybe celebrate his firing from the perspective that this had to have been his last gasp, right? I mean, he'll go back to being a commentator or something. We'll see him pop up on Fox News or CNN or something. But as far as John Bolton having a hand in shaping the world, that was his last chance. And And he's a dying breed, it seems. And I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are a lot of Republicans that are secretly harboring. But, you know.
Oh, dude, I'm telling you, don't underestimate the middle of the country. They got to play to their constituents.
Yeah, but does regime change, does overthrowing foreign governments play to anybody? Who does that play to in America?
If you wrap it in terrorism or whatever we're using now, Middle America.
Yes, but that wrapping is worn quite thin. I mean, that's a boy who's cried wolf twice already. So
yeah, but dude, I'm in Southwest Missouri right now. People around here would probably eat that shit up. Which is
if Trump decided that he wanted to go into, well, okay, you know what? Scratch that. Let's not say Trump. Because if Trump decided something, the diehard Trumpers are going to support him no matter what. If a Republican president decided that they wanted to overthrow, you think they'd have a lot of Republican support on that? Yes.
The Republicans like war because they get to wrap themselves in the flag and patriotism and America. It's a chance to bring the flag out. Hell yeah, they like it.
Look, I'm with you on that's what we've historically seen. I don't know. Maybe it's just because we feel like we have too many of our own problems at home to deal with. That this isn't a subject that gets discussed a lot these days. But I don't know, it just doesn't feel like it really does. I don't feel like a Republican can get the same type of I mean, an event, something could happen that could instigate a war or something like that. No doubt. But just based on what Iran has been doing lately, I mean, John Bolton wasn't about, well, let's keep Iran on notice, and if they ever do something really bad, we catch them with stuff that they're not supposed to have or involved in some terrorism, then we're going to move in. John Bolton and others' philosophies on the Middle East and North Korea was, these guys are fucked. These leaders are crazy, and they are fucking up our moneyed interests in that section of the world. And we're going to look for any excuse to take these guys out. So I don't know. I mean, maybe these big, regime change war hawks are just waiting in the wings. Then they'll have a plan all ready to go.
I kind of agree with Ralphie May on this. The people in the middle of the country that, are worried about terrorism, what are you worried Al-Qaeda is going to do? Bomb the Budweiser plant? I mean, seriously, it's the coastal cities that they probably have more to worry about. And
right, but the question isn't whether the middle is well, I guess the question is, is the middle worried about it?
I would say they're probably more worried than people actually, not everybody, obviously, but I would say that that's probably higher amongst their concerns than people that actually live in cities that would probably be higher on the strike list.
Well, because they're generally more Republican.
Exactly. It's hardwired into them to buy into their party's fear mongering. They're coming to get you, and it's like no one's coming.
Your kids.
No one's coming to Missouri to take your Budweiser from you or make you cut your mullet. You don't worry about Sharia law showing up out there anytime soon. Seriously, your right to worship is pretty safe where you're at. But I do think it's funny that I have very older people in my family who are old school Republicans, and all I heard growing up from them is how Democrats are warmongers. Democrats always get us into wars, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And
that was the Vietnam generation.
It is completely flipped since then. And I'm just like, okay, so why don't I hear you speaking out against these warmongering new Republicans, neocons, whatever you want to call them?
Because they're old now and they don't care.
Well, yeah, because all their kids are past the age of whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So
I've noticed it myself, and definitely noticed it in watching some friends and my family. Your don't give a fuck shows up a lot more the older you get.
Yeah, it's just it's just very weird to hear this deafening silence come from people that I grew up with who were very loudly from the mountaintop screaming that they're against these type of people, and now they just, well, I mean, if you look at silence equaling compliance, then they're complicit as hell in all this.
Well, I mean,
because they have nothing to say.
Remember, too, the new way of the world is, fuck, I just lost it. Oh, you got to toe the party line. Well, if you dare check one box on the other side, you're fucking out.
Well, I mean, that does fit in with, the series that Todd's been doing on propaganda. You have to if you're going to buy into your tribe's ideology, you cannot be an ideological heretic and still be part of that tribe.
Right.
Even if you disagree, you keep it the fuck to yourself. Basically.
Well, because there's many rewards to come to one, especially if you're white and already rich. You do nothing but fail up. And this is a man who was appointed National Security Administrator or advisor. I think it's advisor. I'm going to get it right at least one point in this podcast. Not just wrong about little things, like being wrong about weapons of mass destruction. Not once, but twice wrong about weapons of mass destruction, both in Iraq and Cuba.
Yeah, and for like, once again, for people that were so upset about, Democrats got us into Vietnam and blah, 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 and it was false pretenses and this and that, and we didn't need to be there. And Iraq gets a mulligan. Why? Just because you have a R by your name?
Evil doers.
Well, right.
The axis of evil.
Let's set aside the real reasons why governments go to war and look at these wars as they were presented on their face. Now, I didn't grow up Vietnam era, but of course my parents did, and you can't grow up and not see at least 5 or 6 movies about Vietnam. And
when we were kids, they were everywhere.
Right. So, I mean, it seems like Vietnam was presented more as like we have to step in and save these people that are being slaughtered. Right. There was no concept of a bunch of Vietnamese coming over to America and attacking us. There was no weapons. There was no missiles that they were going to launch. There was no threat directly to America. There was a threat to democracy. There was a threat to human rights. And those are the threats that we were responding to. And again, I'm just talking about on the surface, not the behind the scenes machinations of why a government would go to war. And for Iraq, it started off as kind of the same thing. Oh, Saddam's a tyrant. He's killing and gassing his own people. All of these crazy, weird stories about him. But what really gets everyone's attention is the WMDs and the links to terrorism. So now we have to take out Saddam, not for some humanitarian reason. We have to do it out of self-preservation. We have to take him out before he takes us out. So it is very different ways to go into a war. And I think that's why it would have to take some kind of event to get a Republican to start a war, because they don't start wars out of altruism, or at least not try and sell those wars off of altruism.
Yeah, not anymore. Anyways, they got to stoke the fear, because that's what gets people's attention. That's what rallies everybody together. Fear.
Right. I mean, look at the things that Obama chose to get involved in. I mean, yeah, broader scope. When you're talking about trying to police the Middle East, you're talking about terrorism. But it was, the people of Libya being gassed by their own government. That's what Obama chose to, take limited action on. But all the same, I mean, Trump couldn't sell that. I don't care how magic he is. Somebody would talk him into backing down off of that. It would, unless they could find the angle where that poison gas can get over to America.
That's when he whips out his Sharpie again. You see, this gas cloud is going to come and it's going to attack Alabama, Mississippi.
Keeps getting bigger and bigger.
Alabama, Mississippi first. You will die first. New York will be saved. They're going to put a dome over it. I'm president. I know these things, and yeah. All the blue states go first. It just passes over red states go first. All the blue states are saved. Oh, God. Well, I mean, I would like to be like, I mean, part of me obviously is like, all right, Bolton's out, whatever, one less voice. I mean, obviously, I don't think he's really being listened to or was being listened to all that much. But as one less voice, it's, a chicken shit war hawk who wants to, get us into situations that he was too much of a pussy to put himself into. But God, with this administration, I just got to go, oh, Jesus, who are they going to get to replace him? What clown shoes wearing jackass is going to show up? And, that's my concern. Like, oh, God, please, no one too fucking stupid. Incompetent, but not able to sway anyone is the best I can hope for, right?
I think, just the right amount of bad at their job, like Inspector Gadget, bad at your job. That's what you want, right? Where he always fails in just the right way, and you want to believe that there's some penny there with him as like an assistant or something that is actually, doing the right things. And so, the NSA would, the National Security Advisor would fail in ways that would prevent him from carrying out Trump's plan.
I think it's fitting for this administration to use a cartoon character analogy.
Yes. Yes, the best we can hope for, and the man who's responsible for, or woman, who is responsible for the security of our nation is somebody in the Inspector Gadget mold. Possibly Inspector Clouseau as well.
I was thinking,
kind of a take on the same character, isn't it?
Or Maxwell Smart. Missed it by that much.
Yep. Yeah, a little bit of that.
It's just
that's what Inspector Gadget was. He was Maxwell Smart and Inspector Clouseau.
And technically, he was Maxwell Smart. It was his voice.
Yes.
if his replacement comes out, pops in a tape, and says, "This is who we have to worry about," and you just see a metal claw stroking a cat, "I'll get you, Gadget." I'll be like, "Okay, all right, we're safe. We're going after cartoon villains." Okay. Gadget, okay, yeah.
Oh God, if only we could wag the dog for Trump for the rest of his presidency, and just gaslight him into believing some sort of huge conspiracy that's going to take up all of his time. We need to get moles into the White House to gaslight him.
President Trump, there's a new terrorist organization named Cobra,
right?
And they're after us.
Just keep them busy. Yeah. He got halfway through Mars Attacks before he realized it wasn't a newscast.
And he got real excited when the old lady was like, "They blew up Congress." That's when they had to explain to him, "Sir, this isn't a documentary. This isn't a newscast. This is a Tim Burton movie."
Then he said fake news and he left.
I think what we're saying is if Trump was alive during the original War of the Worlds broadcast, he'd have been one of those people dragging his family into the field to shoot him in the back of the head so they don't get captured by the aliens.
I think he would just leave. He would like I can't imagine him putting enough thought into it that he would actually take his family anywhere, even if it was to execute them.
Didn't he call Barron Melania's son this week? Nice dad.
Hey, is something you're trying to tell us?
Yeah, right.
Do you need to go to Maury?
Him doing the not the father dance. That would be the best gif ever.
Well, we kind of got a preview with that video of him partying with Epstein. So he was doing his
God.
Yeah, he was doing his best impersonation before the movie come out of Kevin James in that movie Hitch, where Will Smith's like, "Right here, that's where you live, just back and forth."
If you ever wanted to dance in a way that communicates, "I have some coke and I'm looking to get my dick sucked," just watch that video and imitate Trump. That's what that dance says.
I think for it to work appropriately, you have to be over a certain age, though. Like if you're 20 and you try that dance with coke, you might just get your coke snorted and you go home with a dry dick, I'm just saying. Because that dance is very age specific in my mind. It is the first time I saw it. The only thing I could think of was Eddie Murphy talking about white people dancing in Raw, and he's like, "That's why God invented this dance," and he did the Carlton dance basically. And
well, Coke's age specific too, Rich. Forget,
Yeah.
we're old.
Yeah.
Not that I've ever done any, but yes, I was told by a doctor there is an expiration date for that drug. You are past it, okay? I was like, right, sure, gotcha. A few of my friends still haven't gotten that memo, though. Oh, all right. Well,
So, yeah, Bolton gets fired on the day before the anniversary of 9/11, right?
yep. And like I said, it's like a normal person getting fired on Christmas Eve.
Right.
You couldn't wait 2 days? Really?
Yeah.
Why? So he could celebrate. Trump ruined the office party. We had 2 cakes planned and everything.
Well, 9/11 this year turned legal. It's officially 18 years old.
Yeah.
Which means
that's why nobody cares about it anymore.
Yeah.
Fuck you, 9/11. Go get a job. Go get your own apartment. All right. We're tired of carrying your burden.
and don't come back here in 2 years bitching about your student loans. You signed the agreement. You knew what you had to pay back. Yeah, it was a very weird year on social media for 9/11 for me because, 10 years ago, if you posted a offensive, silly, whatever meme about 9/11, oh shit, the hammer of Thor came down on your ass. Even as little as 5 years ago, like you'd still probably lose some people on your friends list. The amount of people I saw posting memes about 9/11 and nobody taking them to task for it was amazing. And I mean, like, these weren't like conspiracy theory memes or the, I missed the world of 9/12/01 when we were all one and there was, blah, blah, we were just Americans. Not that type shit. This was like,
We were all one against the Muslims.
this was like, the memes of, the towers and they drew like stoned eyes on them and one's hand in a joint, the other one goes, bro, take this. I'm getting ready to collapse.
Oh, yeah. And then we all went shopping together. Remember that?
We bought cars and duct tape and plastic to save ourselves from the anthrax spores. And
we taped X's over our windows. We don't even know why.
And on 9/12, there was a bunch of American flags on cars. And by 9/20, they were all on the side of the highway, dirtied and ripped apart just because they'd fallen off already. Yeah. But yeah, it was just a very
I love all the people that you can tell they bought an American flag after 9/11 and they haven't touched it since. And it's just hanging on their porch, just ragged.
Yeah, looking like, is that an artifact from 50 years ago? No. It's only 18 years old. I bought that on 9/12.
Which I'm sure a lot of these people were mad about football players kneeling, but you're not supposed to keep a flag in that condition?
Yep.
Oh, dude, there are so many rules about how you're supposed to fly a flag, et cetera, that are not followed by these type of people that get butthurt about anybody not showing proper amounts of patriotism. I'm just like, you idiots aren't showing the proper amounts of patriotism according to your own fucking rules about the flag. So you're not supposed to have a flag flying at night without a light on it. You're supposed to bring it down and
yeah.
et cetera.
American flag themed clothing is just everywhere.
And that's a no-no.
And
correct.
Right. But then there's people like Tommy Lahren who has she is using the American flag as part of her brand. This isn't like Walmart that sells 10,000 shirts and 5 of them have the American flag on. No, probably 50 at least have the American flag on them. And that's just almost everything. She has this whole clothing line. Have you guys seen this?
Oh God, no.
No.
See, is she modeling a thong made out of an American flag? in one of the
No,
pictures?
she's got like these kind of yoga pants, these padded yoga pants, and they have like they come up really high and they have a pouch in the front, and you can keep your gun in it.
Wait, she has yoga pants with a built-in fanny pack? That's a gun holster?
Yeah, kind of. It's all meant to it's meant to be this like really sleek, form-fitting clothing that you can still hide weapons on, or in, I should say.
Well, she just put it in her fucking prison purse and just stuff it up there. Come on, get a little 380 or something.
I'll give her credit.
Yeah, she
knows her audience.
No, she does know her audience. That's knowing.
Yeah, it's all decorated with the American flag. But not only is it decorated in the American flag, it's made in China, of course. Where else would it be made?
Hey, you'll never guess what it's called. Aaron, if you know the answer, don't say it. Rich, it's not that hard. Just think.
I can't remember.
What, these yoga pants?
Her
She's got a whole clothing line. The whole clothing line.
Oh,
there's tank tops, and I guess that's it. I think it's all yoga pants and tank tops. Really.
I'll give you a clue because we're talking about 9/11. Blank fries.
Freedom? Are you serious? Like, yes. I figured Freedom was in. I was thinking like Freedom Wear or something like that. But is that close?
It's called Freedom by Tommy Lauren or Laren or whatever the fuck her name is.
It sounds like the worst perfume you could buy at CVS ever. You know what I'm saying? Like right next to Britney Spears, like, Confusion. Here's Freedom by Tommy Lauren. What the fuck? Hey, dude, Patrice O'Neal was right. Just make 9/11 a hot dog and hamburger holiday and get it the fuck over with. Seriously. Like, we are fucked as a nation. We are just fucked in the head. Seriously, man.
There's a Twitter account that's got a split picture of her. She's wearing like, what does she got on? Like, yoga pants that look like they got the stars. There's no red and white, but looked like they got the star pattern from the American flag on them. And they got it right next to a picture of the karate instructor from Napoleon Dynamite wearing his pants.
You think anyone wants a kick in the face while I'm wearing these bad boys?
Yes.
I'll kick the communism right out your ass. Oh, God.
Yeah, and let's face it, these yoga pants only work and conceal the weapon on Tommy because she is a string bean.
Yeah, because I'm the average Midwestern housewife in yoga pants is anyways. So
we're gonna see the gun pressing up against your gunt. All right.
Yeah, pretty much.
We're gonna have a gunt.
Your fupa's gonna give it away, sweetheart. Sorry.
Unregimented.
ChristopherMedia.net.
For the ones who know that a little late is always too late. And that the clock doesn't stop just because you're missing a part. Grainger offers supplies and solutions for every industry. And our Keep Stock inventory management solutions help ensure you have the right stuff in the right place at exactly the right time. Visit Grainger.com/keepstock to learn more. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Once upon a time in a convenience store, a woman asked, "Which zero-calorie drink will I like more?" The cashier said, "I have a thought. Coke Zero Sugar always hits the spot." The taste made her heart fill with laughter, and with her Coke Zero Sugar, she lived happily ever after. Coca-Cola Zero Sugar, unbelievably delicious.
No trip to the store is complete without the unbelievably delicious zero-calorie taste of Coke Zero Sugar.
ChristopherMedia.net.
Unregimented.
But yeah, it just, like I said, it's very strange because 9/11 was such a hands-off, only places like 4chan and trolls make jokes about for so long, and now this sad excuse for a newscaster has this type of shit. And I guarantee you, I didn't look hard enough, but if I'd started digging through some of my more conservative friends' shit, someone would have posted it in relation to 9/11, been like, "Hey, get your freedom clothes." I'm like, no, don't get your freedom clothes. And
then you have the other overdue, Rich.
Well, I'm surprised.
We should have brushed this off like Luke Skywalker.
Wait. It took me a second. I'm thinking, yeah, he really didn't get that upset about Uncle Owen. But then I realized you meant brush him off like the latest Star Wars movie. I got you.
Like Jay-Z style.
Yeah.
Because Luke is a Jay-Z fan.
If you're feeling like a Jedi, Jabba, go ahead, brush your shoulder off. But I guess it does show. I mean, 18 years in today's society before it gets ridiculous, like it seems to have. That is a pretty long time for us to have kept our composure, whatever the fuck you want to call it. I don't even know sense of class. I mean, it's just
right. Well, it's not just about, a tragedy is a tragedy, right? We remember tragedies. And we end up celebrating them in a lot of instances. But this particular tragedy, it wasn't just about the lives lost in 9/11. It was this idea that everything had changed after that. And by everything changing,
on our own soil, it's last time it happened before that was Pearl Harbor, and before that was what, the Revolutionary War.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was eye-opening for a lot of people, but I don't know. I mean, it.
Well, I tend to agree with a buddy of mine who he's a very taxation is theft libertarian, but he posted an opinion piece that basically said, America after 9/11, the terrorist won, and it went on to explain how.
That's what I was trying to say.
The terrorists attacked us, and then our own government finished the job by eroding our civil liberties, spying on its own people, getting rid of habeas corpus, Guantanamo Bay, everything that supposedly we stood for and built this country on, we absolutely did a 180 on because we got attacked. And I agree with that. I'm sorry. Look, the freedom isn't free bunch. Everybody's rolled their eyes about that to a certain extent. But here's the truth about freedom. With freedom comes a certain risk. That's part of freedom. You're not gonna. You can't control everything if you have a truly free society. That's the point of freedom. The individual trumps the state, and
it comes with a certain amount of responsibility. The freedom isn't free thing is always focused on other people's sacrifices.
Yeah.
And really it should be focused on an individual's responsibility.
But and then NPR went in a completely opposite direction of everything we've been talking about. And I understand it's NPR, and I understand that, they started today with their twice a year, send us money so we can stay on the air drive. So it was getting close to where they have to pander to the people who are actually going to hand them money. But they were like, we're going to talk to somebody on one of their programs here. We're going to talk to somebody who was affected by 9/11. He is a 40-year-old gay Pakistani man who lived in Salt Lake City for the last 20 years. And I'm like, wait, what the fuck? How does any of those things have to do with now? He wasn't in New York. Pakistani or not, that had nothing to do with 9/11.
It's in everything you just said. It checks all the NPR boxes.
And then like he didn't even give them
Brown.
Well, he didn't give them the money shot they were looking for. Because, they go through this interview and they're like, how has the world changed for you since 9/11? And he's like, I'm a Muslim, but for the most part, I went through what every Muslim had to, went through after 9/11. Look, these people are crazy. These are not your average Muslims. It's just like Christians who blow up abortion clinics are not your average Christians. He goes, and for the most part, the people I've dealt with on a day-to-day basis have understood. And I mean, the interviewer just kept digging and digging, and like, there's got to be something. And finally, they just they put their cards face up on the table and said, well, how many times have you been harassed verbally for your religion, belief, sexuality, race, whatever, since you've been in Salt Lake City? And he goes, I've had one person make a comment that I heard in 20 years.
So they were hoping this guy would just give them stories about 20 years of daily hate crimes?
Yeah, and I'm like,
they're fishing for.
Well, first of all, you're picking on the Mormons, the nicest sect of crazy Christians. Mormons are really nice people. Mormons aren't known for being assholes and starting inquisitions and shit.
I will say with my job, I've met a few Mormons, and so bingo, they'd say are some of the nicest guys I've like. I can't believe you're this nice. I thought only characters in movies were this nice, kind of nice.
I mean, there's a reason South Park portrays Mormons. South Park ravages everybody, but, Mormons, it's like any Mormon family is like super nice and polite. And yeah, it's a stereotype, but there's always more than a few grains of truth in the stereotype. And I was just like, you'd have been better off to pick a taxi driver who's lived in New York for the last 20 years. Now, that's a motherfucker that's probably been called every name in the book. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I was like, NPR, what are you trying to do here? But like I said, the cynical side of me perked up and was like, they're looking to... we got to check all these boxes. And when they interviewed him, he didn't give him the money shot because there was no money shot to give. And I was just like,
whoever produced that show, that's bad producing. Yeah, you should absolutely get someone from New York, where it happened. They're probably the subject of more derision than someone who is fucking 2,000 miles away in Utah.
Right. They tried to statistically figure out who would be the most oppressed person in America post 9/11, instead of looking at the where the attack happened, where people are least likely to forget.
Yeah, and I mean, how hard did you have to look for the one gay Muslim Pakistani in Salt Lake City, whereas gay Muslim Pakistani in New York, they probably have their own borough. I mean, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not even. I mean, I'm kind of joking, but isn't there like the meatpacking district, no pun intended, in New York, known as like, or used to be known as like the gay district, like the Castro district is in San Francisco. Kind of took a hit. Now the whole city's known as. Yeah. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You know what I think they tried to do? Oh boy, here we go. I bet they tried to let's find a Muslim guy who lives around the most white people. I bet he's had just shit perpetrated on him every day for 20 years because white guys are evil.
Well, not only that, but once again, Salt Lake City, really, like those are the most picked on quote unquote Christians out of all Christianity, because they're like quote unquote real Christians look at him and go, really? A 14-year-old in the United States found the lost teachings of Jesus about how he came here after he was crucified and resurrected and taught the Indians about himself? Really? You expect us to believe that Joseph Smith bullshit?
Right, you don't hear you don't hear Mormons criticizing other people's religion, and it's not just because they're so damn nice, because they don't know they don't have a foot to stand on.
Yeah, they know they're in a glass house.
Exactly.
When you're anything, there go the multiple wives, there goes the magic underwear.
Yeah, when you are the redheaded stepchild of Christianity, I guess you do just like, well, we just accept everybody, because if we don't, we'd have to shoot ourselves in the head, because we really do believe in some weird shit. Well, it's, whatever. It was, to me, it was NPR, like you said, Chris, trying to go for the easy slam dunk, and they actually missed an opportunity to have people on who have been affected and were close to the attack. And that would have, to me, been a lot more relevant to what the tone of the story was, because it was very anticlimactic. I mean, it really was. It was like watching Paranormal Activity, and you get to the end, and it's just a big jump scare. You're like, that's it? I sat through watching people sleep for 2 hours for this shit? Really? This is retarded, So, I once again, I felt like I'd slipped into the next universe over on this 9/11, where it's like, the reverence for what happened is gone, and I mean, but then there were a few people that brought it all back, and those were the people, I mentioned this briefly, that posted the "I miss the America of 9/12/01," and the people that said, we're walking around wearing shirts that said some people did some things. And they were like, let me tell you what some people did. And I'm like, there we go. There's that good old American hate that I've been looking for on 9/11. That's what I'm used to. But I mean, I don't know. Maybe it is a generational thing, because you have a lot of people now who were young or don't remember clearly the world prior to that day.
The seniors in high school don't even remember it. It was something that happened when they were a baby or before they were born.
Oh, absolutely. And so to them, it's like reading about ancient history. Think about this. When we were taught in school about Pearl Harbor, could we really conceive of what that meant? Could we put that in like go, oh, well, there's been an incident in our lifetime that we could equate this to on any level? I mean, what's the closest when we were growing up that we could have equated that to?
Nothing.
Oh, the invasion of Grenada?
Yeah.
The Challenger explosion?
Right. Yeah, the Challenger explosion.
But that wasn't us being attacked. Now, if right before the Challenger exploded, you heard Allah Akbar, then we would have a reason. Okay, but no, that was just NASA cutting corners because, well, it's the government, dummy. What do you expect them to do? So I don't know. It's just very strange, and it feels to me like it's just another example that I'm getting older and more irrelevant, because I'm like, oh, okay, this doesn't mean the same thing to these people. Gotcha. And and believe me, I'm not on some like flag waving, you don't love America, you get out. I ain't on some shit like that. But
honestly, every 9/11 memorial since has made me cringe. And I mean, I understand the tendency. I understand the emotion behind it, but I don't see why we need to relive this on the anniversary. As long as it's in the history books, as long as yes, people died, and people die all the time, and the people closest to them hopefully know how to memorialize them and remember them, and they have their tributes, and I'm sure those anniversaries are really difficult on anyone who loses somebody. But as a nation, I don't see what good it does.
Well, I will say this. I'm glad we've moved away from the first few years, like 2002, 2003. I think 2004 is the last time I remember seeing this documentary. Because, I mean, they were going hard those first couple anniversaries of 9/11, first few years afterwards. Like, I remember watching the documentary I'm referring to was, news cameras were on the ground, and, the towers hadn't collapsed yet. And all of a sudden you start hearing these loud bangs, and the cops and the news crew's like, what's that? What's that? What's that? And then the news crew pans up and looks at a person doing a, head first swan dive from whatever floor of the, World Trade Center, instead of burning alive. And I'm like, I really don't need to see that every year. You know what I'm saying? I saw it once. It's burned in my memory. Must we see that every year? Must I hear that sound every year? Like, I get it. I understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to rile up anger and yes, we should be pissed off. We were attacked. But at the same time, I'm cursed with the ability to go, yeah, it was a terrorist attack on civilians, but how many civilians have we left in our wake? I mean, if that's the way we're going to play the game, why should we be shocked when our enemy plays it the same way? I mean, it's kind of hard to claim some sort of moral high ground when you look at the death toll in Vietnam and you realize that, maybe half of those people were enemy combatants. Especially once Nixon was like, we're just going to napalm and carpet bomb the fucking North. I mean, that's the way the game's played, folks. All right? War is ugly, and war is not World War II anymore. War is guerrilla warfare. War is hit-and-run tactics. War is terrorist tactics.
Well, I think the difference between what the two things you're talking about is one was an actual war, and this was just an attack on people who weren't doing shit.
Well, no, they're both wars, and innocents were killed in both. I mean, one was...
9/11 was a war that only one side knew they were fighting until it happened, I guess. Whereas Vietnam, both sides knew they were in conflict.
Right. Vietnam we were able to define it within the traditional parameters of war, whereas we didn't, the terrorist attack didn't fit that. I mean, Al-Qaeda was at war, and the U.S. government knew that Al-Qaeda was at war with us. They just didn't take it seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's basically, one side was like, we're at war, and we were like, no, we're not. And then halfway through that day, we were like, we're at war. In fact, I remember clearly being at work, and one of the first things, because I worked with a few friends of mine that had spent time in the military, and I mean, once that second plane hit, they like, all question of whether this was an accident or not went away, and they got real serious and said, we're going to war. Like, that, there's no way this shit is just, there's not going to be a retaliation. And it was quite prescient of one of my friends, and he said, who knows how long this shit will last? Because how the fuck do you fight a war on terrorism? And I mean, 18 years later, we're still in Afghanistan, you know, we still have bases in Iraq.
And we still don't know how to fight a war on terrorism.
Well, the people that fought the war on terror called the people that fought the war on drugs and said, what are you doing to succeed?
Yeah.
How can we make a war last 2 decades, not accomplish anything, and spend a shitload of money?
Start with the point where you won the war, and then we'll work backwards from there.
Yeah.
Oh, you haven't won that war? Oh, it's impossible? I mean, you know, war on drugs, actually, that is possible. If the government was serious about having a war on drugs, then they could just, you know, institute martial law. They could lock down the whole nation. They could, through force and through, you know, abusing the rights of every citizen in the country, they could conceivably get rid of every drug in the country. That is a possible thing. Fighting terrorism and thinking that you can win a war on terrorism, that you can eradicate terrorism. I mean, first of all, everyone's got a different definition of who is and isn't a terrorist, including the terrorists themselves. And the more you fight, the more you create. So winning a war on terrorism means what? Wiping out the whole world? Where does it end? Where do you find that magic number of we killed the right amount of people so that nobody else was angry about those people that we killed?
Well, just like to win the war on drugs, just like to win the war on drugs, you'd have to go to the extreme of, like you said, declaring martial law or something along those lines. To quote unquote win the war on terrorism, there'd have to be a lot of sheets of glass in the Middle East and a whole lot of innocent people that went with them. Just
right.
Bomb the fuck. I mean, fuck the Stone Age. Half of those countries are already still there. I mean, you just got to turn it into one sheet of glass and just call it a fucking day. And even then, there's going to be an uprising coming from some other region of this fucking world.
But also, I mean, in a traditionally defined war, you have usually some piece of property that's being fought over. You know, I mean, it's not been the case of recent wars that it necessarily means that, you know, somebody's going to walk away with a chunk of somebody else's country. But that's how things have traditionally gone in the world. And in terrorism, you don't have that. I mean, they're not attacking the U.S. so that they can weaken us for a ground assault. They're not looking to they don't want our country. They just want us to pay for our hubris. They just want us to be scared and to take them as a real threat and sink money and time and people's lives into this endeavor. And then the terrorists have won. So the terrorist goals are low, easily achievable, very cheaply achievable with very low manpower. And the government's goals that deems to fight terrorism throws millions of dollars, tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people, and wraps itself up in knots of fear over this, over trying to eradicate terrorism. There is no winning. What I'm saying is, not only do you not, there's no end game in fighting terrorism, but by fighting it, you actually are doing exactly what the terrorists want. So the terrorists...
Yeah, ironically, the common through line on both sides is fear.
Yeah, well, it's all about feel. I mean, that's how you control people. And you can control people in a number of different ways, but if you want to talk about controlling a lot of people very effectively and very cheaply, then fear is your best motivator.
Well, that's probably half the reason the Declaration of Independence got me, fear.
Well, it was right. No, absolutely. I mean, that's how you start. It's not always to bad ends. Sometimes you illuminate people of fears of things that they know that they don't want, right?
Hey, if we didn't develop a fear of being eaten, we wouldn't be where we're at on the evolutionary scale. So.
Right. But yeah, I mean, the building of America was a process of building up people's fears in a king, in a monarch, in somebody who, because their bloodline is quote unquote pure in some way, gets to tell you what to do.
Well, I mean, if it's just a matter of a piece of land, can't we just give like the terrorists like Alaska?
It's not. No, they don't need Alaska. They've already won.
I ain't gonna lie. I'm not even gonna front. I'm just trying to shoehorn in there. I forgot about this. Sarah Palin is getting a divorce.
Oh, that's right.
Now's your chance, Rich.
Who could have foreseen?
Yeah, well, look, she fucked Glenn Rice, all right, a pro basketball player. What am I going to do? All right? There's not much I can bring to that table. And as many kids as she's popped out, unless she wants her shit pussy fucked, there really ain't nothing I can do. It'd be like stirring a cup of coffee, clink, 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 clink. You know, it's just...
Her husband's probably like, she can have the house and all the cars. I just want my balls back. I get to keep my balls. She can keep the house.
It's in the divorce decree. She can have everything. I keep my balls, and you have to stop calling me Mr. Palin. Oh, God. Yeah, that's the family values candidate, folks. How many kids has her kids had out of wedlock? Divorces, family values right there. And here's the deal. I wouldn't even have anything to say about any of that if you didn't try to shove that shit down our throats.
If it wasn't evident from your behavior that you just like fucking and hate, you like fucking and hate rubbers. Right? That's it. Yeah. That's why you have a large family. That's why your kids are having kids. And that's probably why you're looking to move on to some other dick now.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, man, it wouldn't work between us because, obviously she'd let me hit it raw, but she's going to keep any kid that she gets pregnant with. And no, that ain't going to work. Sorry. And it's been my experience, chicks like that, it's like they just starfish on the bed. It's like fucking a tranquilized mattress. I'm good. Sorry.
Yeah. Hey, you already got your prize. I'm naked. The rest is up to you now.
Wait, Chris, what is your infamous saying? Well, before you were married, I'll take a 5 that tries hard over a 10 that lays there.
Absolutely.
Yes. Act like you're into it a little bit. Just give me something to work with here. Oh,
I'll take 7.5 with daddy issues, please.
Yeah.
I'll take a 6 with an uncle with boundary issues. Who am I bullshitting? I'll take a 1 with a hunchback and a club foot at this point.
Just ordering up women like their value meals.
No, let me stop bullshitting. I'll take a female who looks like me in a wig, beard and all. You know what I'm saying? Honey, let's go shave. Oh, you want me to shave my pussy? No, your face. Come on, let's go. Aaron, I need to borrow a razor.
You just keep that.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, can you imagine the razor bumps on that bitch? Oof. Oh, God. Well, actually, if I did want a woman with a beard, 2019 is a good time to find one.
Yeah, there you go.
So, yeah.
Might get a dick, too.
I got the bonus plan. Come home to Jamaica. Good
So,
times.
unregimented.
ChristopherMedia.net.
As much as life has changed over the last year, you're still pretty busy. So consider convenient COVID-19 testing from Quest. Get the same tests hospitals use without a doctor visit. Simply order online, select from drive-through or at-home options, and get results sent securely to your phone or computer. It's a great fit for your busy life. With over 25 million COVID-19 tests processed, you can count on Quest. So order your test today at questcovid19.com.
Hear from me, four-time Olympic gold medalist Michael Johnson, on the Data Brilliant podcast from data leaders Click. I talked to Click's Joe Dos Santos about the role of data in my running career and in my business today as I help prepare future athletes. Tune in to hear us as we discuss the psychological and personal qualities needed to be a champion and how data can help you recognize what it takes to win. Search Data Brilliant on your preferred podcast platform to listen now.
ChristopherMedia.net.
Unregimented.
Daniel Johnston passed away this week. Did he die on 9/11?
I believe so. Yeah. It was yesterday. Yesterday I heard about it around 5 o'clock, so probably earlier in the day.
Was this an inside job too?
Well, yeah. So the story is posted on 9/11. It says the day before, though, he passed away. The following night. Presumed heart attack at the age of 58.
Yeah,
I know nothing about this guy. We discovered this in the pre-show chat.
Well, he's had multiple documentaries made about him, and for a hot second in the mid 80s, he like MTV went down to Austin for something, like one of their maybe spring break or one of those type of bullshit things they used to do. Yeah. And he was actually on MTV.
He was, really?
And they interviewed him. He played live. He was opening for he was opening for somebody who, if I said the name of the band, you'd recognize him at this point. But and I guess a producer saw him and was just like, saw the crowd's reaction to him and was like, okay, there's something here. Go ask him if he'll do an interview. And you can find those clips on YouTube, or if you. Well, first of all, let's set the stage here. Daniel Johnston was a very troubled man. As far as I know, diagnosed at the very least with schizophrenia.
Manic depressive.
Yeah, I mean there was a lot of issues going on there, and he was also one of those people who write songs that when you hear him play them, it might not click with you, but when someone else covers it, you go, "Oh, that's a great song," or "I like that song." But then if I played you the original, you'd go, "Is that even the same song? I don't even get this. Why are you listening to this?" What'd you call him, Aaron? Or was it Chris? Lo-fi?
Yeah.
Artist? Yeah. Like,
well, right. I mean, he was the lowest of lo-fi. He was shout and play piano into a tape recorder.
And there's the most famous documentary about him is called "The Devil and Daniel Johnston."
Yeah, great documentary.
Which I've actually shown it to a few people, and they're like, I mean, I don't think I could sit and listen to a whole album of his, but I got an appreciation for what he's doing now. I get it a lot more.
A whole album of Daniel Johnston is honestly, and I appreciate his music, but it's a slog. I'm not likely to listen to, even multiple Daniel Johnston songs in a row. Might go seek out a couple here and there. I appreciate him as a songwriter. I think he's a great songwriter. But yeah, I would rather hear somebody else play his songs ultimately.
Well, wasn't that long after you moved in, I came home or was going to the kitchen or something, and I'm like, wait a minute. I turn around and I look at you, I'm like, never had a roommate where I walk in and he's listening to Daniel Johnston.
Was I listening to Daniel Johnston?
Yeah, it was on your playlist on shuffle, and you were like, "Oh, it's on my playlist and it's on shuffle," and I'm like, "Yeah, but still, it's not something you usually walk into a room and hear ever, like ever." that's not something that people just, hey, I'm going to put this on. But
yeah, no, I really do think he's a great songwriter, though, because first of all, his lyrics they're the perfect combination for pop music. They're overly simple and with strange flares of like just weirdness, right? Or like overly simple language, but like specific references that don't really mean anything, but you could make them mean something. So it has a universal appeal, the lyrics that he writes, first of all. Then on top of that, his actual songwriting, in the way that, because he performs all these, I don't know how much, it's been a long time since I've seen the documentary. Maybe they cover some of this. I don't think he does a lot of writing. And certainly most of the stuff that he's done isn't even on a multi-track. So he doesn't have the ability to overdub, so it's all one take, a lot of these performances, and they just seem to flow out of him in a way that like there's a very bluesy quality to his music, not in the way that like blues music is infected every form of popular music in the US, but in the very traditional sense of like one guy with the blues guitar, right? When Led Zeppelin covers a blues song, they put it into 4/4 so they can rock it. Whereas a lot of these, like, the Muddy Water songs, you listen to them, they're in whatever time signature fits the flow of the lyrics and the melody, right? If it means adding a couple beats here or there or taking away a couple here and there, it's whatever fits.
Oh, John Lee Hooker was a master at that.
Yeah.
Especially when you got him just by himself with a guitar.
Or somebody who was able to translate that into more rhythmic, poppier music was Johnny Cash.
Yeah.
And Daniel Johnston's stuff is very much like that. It flows in the way that it needs to, right? The stuff, whatever he's playing on piano or whatever, is in service of the lyric and the melody. And it's always about getting out a thought or an idea or a feeling, right? You never listen to any of his songs and think that he was going, oh, this is really cool. This sounds really cool when I do this. It just like a lot of people, especially people who make music on their own, like electronic music. It's a lot of, pushing stuff around and twiddling knobs and going, oh, this sounds kind of cool. But that's a totally different thing from building. Ultimately, I'm not talking about what makes good music or not, but if we want to just talk about the craft of songwriting, what makes a good song, if you don't start with the lyric and melody, then it doesn't matter how cool the thing that you're doing on guitar is. It's not likely that people are going to remember that. I mean, Jimi Hendrix was doing amazing things with his guitar and blowing people's minds with his performances. But why do we listen to his music today? Because he was so crazy? Because it lit his Strat on fire? Because he harnessed feedback in certain ways? Is that why you listen to, still to this day, and enjoy Jimi Hendrix recordings? No. Because it's that excellent guitar work that goes hand in hand with the songwriting.
Yeah.
And the way that he handles the melody and everything. So, yeah, at his core, like, Daniel Johnston was not, he was a performer. He was a performer in the way that, like, he just had to perform. I don't know what, or if Daniel Johnston really ever performed in front of people.
Yeah, no, he did. That's what I was going to say. He was right place, right time in that 80s Austin scene. Mm-hmm. That was just weird enough with the Butthole Surfers and even like Sonic Youth used to go down and have him open for him.
Okay.
And Bill Hicks had him open for him, and that's that. As far as I know, there's no recordings of that, but I would pay to hear a Bill Hicks audience listening to Daniel Johnston in Austin, Texas in 1985. I would pay to listen.
Get off the stage, faggot.
But because, Bill Hicks, I don't think had found his audience necessarily at that point. So he was probably still just like, hey, he's got a little bit of a draw. And, hey, who do you want to open for you? Daniel Johnston. Okay. And then this guy comes out with a guitar, and they're like, "Oh shit, this isn't what we thought. We thought it was going to be another stand-up." But yeah, I think it was a matter of right place, right time. And if you watch the documentary, a lot of the musicians kind of took him under their wing because he was really, at that point in his life, two separate people. When he was on his medication, he was always a bit off. Like, I remember watching the movie, and I didn't know this term at the time. But, like, now, like, he's on the spectrum somewhere, it seems like, no matter what. Even when he was on his medication, he was, on his most even of keel that he could get. Uh-huh. But when he got off of it, he got out there. I mean, he was thinking that, the devil was trying to possess him and people were demons, and he was running around Austin screaming at people and having just psychotic breaks and in and out of institutions and his family. The thing I took away from the documentary is, holy shit, his family loves him, because my family wouldn't have put up with that shit for more than 6 months before they just put me in the deepest, darkest institution they could have found and been like, we don't talk about him. Because, I mean, his parents did everything they possibly could. These musicians that were friends of his, Gibby Haynes and a bunch of other local indie musicians, I mean, they took him in, they fed him, they would take him to his to his doctor's appointments and stuff to help him. I mean, it was just, like I said, right time, right place. If that scene wasn't as insular and as tight-knit as it was at that time, he would have probably just floated into and been an open micer and then floated back out into obscurity.
No one would have remembered him. That's a good point.
But they saw him, and they saw a kindred spirit in a musician, but they also saw a very damaged human. And the musicians get a bad rap a lot of times, but a lot of musicians are very empathetic. That's what gives them their ability to be musicians. And like, even if you're listening to us and you YouTube one of his songs and go, "This is garbage," do yourself a favor, watch the documentary. Give it a half hour. If you don't like it for a half hour, turn it off. It's not
right. You kind of have to understand. You can't, if you just put on a Daniel Johnston recording, having never heard him and only now becoming aware of him, you're not even getting the full story. I don't think it's going to come across. I mean, maybe for people who are musicians, if they're, I'm sure there's plenty of musicians out there who still haven't heard of this guy. You might be interested in his recordings from a songwriting aspect. But yeah, you're right. You kind of have to. It's much more effective when you understand a little bit about the whole person behind it.
Yeah, and I'm not giving anything away because it's got to be going on 20-year-old documentary. So, I mean, he was still in his late 30s, maybe early 40s when the end of it was recorded. He still had, legit musicians from the Austin music scene and from music scenes all over coming to him, trying to get him, back on keel, get him out, get him properly recorded. And it's just his mental illness, just it was too much. He could never overcome it. I mean, if I'm remembering the end of the documentary correctly, he had a bunch of guys in their 20s who grew up on his music and basically worshiped him, doing their best to get him some sort of success to where he could make a living or at least start cashing some checks off of his money. Off of his music. And that's got to tell you something right there, because it's going to fly in the face of what I just said about musicians being empathetic. There's also a lot of cutthroat motherfuckers out there in the music business who are happy to step on your head to get 1 inch higher, towards the brass ring. Mm-hmm. And I didn't pick up that these guys were doing this to piggyback off of him onto something else. I got that these guys were doing this because they actually believed in him and his music, which is a very rare thing. Let's just put it that way, in my experience at least.
Yeah, well, they did there was a covers album. Actually, the 2-disc set that you can get has a bunch of covers, and then the second disc is the originals.
Yeah.
And here's the artist that covered Daniel Johnston on this compilation. Teenage Fan Club with Jad Fair. It was Jad Fair is half Japanese, I think. I think that's right. Clem Snide, Gordon Gano from The Violent Femmes, Eels, TV on the Radio. I don't know who the rabbit is. Calvin Johnson. I don't know if you guys know Calvin Johnson. He is he started K Records in Seattle. He's
Number 81.
No, not the football player.
No.
I knew that's where Greg was going.
Dub Narcotic is one of his bands. He did a great EP with the Blues Explosion. And he has a project with the Halo Benders, with the guy from Built to Spill. Anyway, Bright Eyes, Death Cab for Cutie, Beck, Sparkle Horse with Flaming Lips, Mercury Rev, Vic Chestnut, the Starlight Mints. I forgot about that band. M. Ward, Gooster, and Tom Waits. I guarantee you, not one of those artists did anyone have to twist their arm to be involved with that compilation. No. Nobody had to call in a favor.
Yeah, it's just it's one of those footnotes, and he's one of those footnotes in music history that is just fascinating to me because, like I said, he is any place else, any time else, he would just have been a mention of, did you see that weird guy come in and play guitar? And that'd have been the end of it, you know. And it's just, I kind of root for the underdogs, so that's why I guess it stuck with me all these years.
Who's my man with the lumpy head and the Casio, the Rock on Chicago?
Cut the mullet.
Wesley Willis.
He'd headbutt you when he met you.
Right. So he was kind of like a Wesley Willis, only Wesley Willis didn't write good songs.
Good is relative. I mean, cut the mullet, get that filthy rat's nest off your head. That's a great line.
Sure. Look, I'm not discrediting the art for what it is. I'm talking about the art of songcraft.
No, absolutely. I'm just being. I just want to say that line.
Death Cab for Cutie covering "Cut the Mullet." I just can't see that working.
But I can see Ween doing it.
Yes.
Ween wishes. I love me some Ween, and Ween wishes they were as cool as Wesley Willis. I met Wesley Willis once.
Did you headbutt
I met him. He headbutt other members of the art supply store that I was working at the time. I did not get one from himself, but he came in to buy a bunch of markers because he used to do the marker drawings, the cityscapes. Have you guys know what I'm talking about?
No.
Yeah, he would do these like really detailed cityscapes, and he'd just draw them with colored markers. He was actually, he was a better artist than he was a songwriter. It's just his songs were more entertaining.
Actually, yeah, it looks like.
Are you looking at him?
Yeah, it's not like.
Right, it's not a Van Gogh.
It's not Starry Night, but
yeah,
but he does that all freehand too. Yeah, like he's not penciling in something.
It looks better than one of his songs sounds.
Yeah,
looks like. The one I'm looking at looks like an Avett Brothers video. So I can't remember the video, but like it's all drawing like that, and it's just a time lapse of a field into a big city, and then it all breaks down and goes back to a field. Sorry, it's just what it reminded me of. But yeah, no, they're legit.
Yeah, kind of trippy. So anyway, yeah, I didn't mean to sidetrack us with the Wesley Willis because there really is no comparison other than they are weird people, I guess.
But you know what? I will say this, man. Look, I know some people would say, well, look, they, both Wesley Willis and Daniel Johnston obviously died young, obviously had their problems. But man, whatever was in them that let them flow like they flowed, let them fucking do what the fuck they wanted to do without concern about.
I think that's what I think that's a big part of why artists in that Austin scene were drawn to Daniel Johnston, not just for the songs that he was making, but the way he was doing it, the shameless way that he was presenting his art.
Yeah.
It's like he may have even been autistic. It's like he wasn't even trying to make a connection. He was just playing a song.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, if any other person would have listened back to their performance of, you know, piano or guitar out of tune and singing out of tune and go, what am I doing? Like, nobody wants to hear this, and they'd never make another tape. And it was that complete lack of filter, of self-awareness, and just, I guess, drive, maybe just because of the lack of anything else, you know, meaningful to cling on to in your life, that, I don't know, that I think artists are jealous of. You know, we all want to make our unself-consciously. It's impossible to do completely, but, you know, sometimes you slip into those moments where you just feel like it's flowing through you, and those are far and few between sometimes. You know, because then you start thinking, oh wow, I'm actually doing really good, and then you fuck up. Where like
and then the ecstasy wears off, and you come out of the moment. Yes,
right. Where when I listen to a Daniel Johnston performance, I don't imagine that there's that part of his brain that's turned on at that point, or if it even exists. There's not that voice in his head like, is this going okay? Did you hit the chorus right? Were you a little flat on that last note? There's none of that. It's just, and I understand, like, the songs being lo-fi, the songs not being, you know, traditionally in key, it's going to turn a lot of people off. But those, like I said, I'm not going to listen to a whole album likely, but I still appreciate the original performances because passion isn't even the right word for it, right? Because passion would imply that he had some sort of desire, that he had a desire to be heard or desire to create something. And it doesn't feel like the songs were born out of desire. They were just born out of necessity.
There was no...
Like, if he didn't put this stuff out on tape, whether anyone was going to listen to it or not, he didn't know what he was going to do.
To me, there was no... It wasn't part of a grander scheme. It wasn't part of, you know, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and this is good for my career. There was no pretense about it. It was just...
Right. As much as, like, rock and roll artists especially, you know, some of them will just go ahead and admit, I want fame, I want girls, I want everything, but a lot of them try and go, you know, dress it up with the artifice of, you know, I just want to be heard, and I want to make my art. But that's all the same emotion, whether you want to... It's like what stuck with me that Henry Rollins always said about making music. He's like, I don't really care about your intent in making music as long as you're not doing it to hurt other people. If your intent is to get a blowjob, I'm all for you. Make that music and get your dick sucked. But when it only crosses a line for him and for myself as well when you do it out of ill intent. But there's not even that, right? There's no ill intent. There's no intent at all. There's no making this, you know, putting this out with an end game in mind. I mean, maybe there is, you know, this is all just me reading into it. And, you know, maybe I just have this fantasy version.
Well, the one thing I would say seemed to be a driving, something that drove him was he tended to fall in love with any female musician who showed him any attention, and that would spark a new round of music because obviously they were looking at him going, oh, that's sweet. No, thank you. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, unless you are like, you know, just King Ding-a-ling with a great sense of humor and, you know, a jaw cut out from granite, every guy's been on the receiving end of that and knows what that's like. This was this guy's entire life. And that seemed to be like the thing that really, like when he would go into a new burst of creativity, it came out of a longing to be with somebody. And at a certain point in the documentary, I remember, because I watched it with an ex of mine, I remember I turned to her and I said, I don't even think it's a particular woman. He just wants to be loved. Like,
yeah,
by someone who doesn't have to love him, a.k.a. not a family member, you know, which, yeah, that might be misguided, but isn't... We're going to get sappy here for a second.
No,
Isn't that pretty much what we all want?
No, it's not misguided at all. I mean, I think that's part of the purity of his songs that I was trying to get my hands around because, you know, I don't know. So you write a love song for somebody, right? That seems like rather pure. Like, I feel all these emotions for them, I want to express them in this way, or you just thought it was the best way to get into their pants. Probably more often option B. Where, yeah, I mean, I agree with you that I'm not saying that Daniel Johnston was so shut off to the world that he wasn't affected by the things that we are. It's the opposite. I mean, he was just, he was affected by desire, and he was affected by lack of things that he desired, in the same way that everyone experiences that. But the way that he expressed it wasn't like, I'm going to record this song and it's going to make it all right because I'm going to get the girl, or I'm going to get the record contract and make some money and then get the girl, or any of that. It was just like, I need to sing this song because I'm, if I don't express these emotions inside of me, then I'm just going to explode.
Well, you guys piqued my interest. I'm going to check out this documentary. Is it on Netflix or anywhere? Or do I got to buy it?
I'm sure. Yeah, I imagine you can find it quite easily out there. I don't know if it ever popped up on Netflix or something like that, but
I want
The Devil in Daniel Johnston is the one that I remember.
Yeah, that's the main one, and
that's the one that keeps coming up on
the
internet.
Say, at one point, it was broke up into a few different parts, but it was on YouTube at one point. Might have to do some digging because of for copyright reasons, but I swore I showed it to one person. I showed him the first part on YouTube, and I was like, "Do you want to watch the second part?" They were like, "Yeah, actually, it's kind of interesting." I was like, "All right," but I mean, if that happened, that was years ago, so who knows if it's still up.
Yeah, I gotta watch documentaries every fucking weekend. It's my turn to pick one. I'm gonna pull rank this weekend.
If you want to do a double feature, watch that and Crumb.
Rob C. Mary has sung the praises of that one.
You watch those two documentaries and everything in your life will be normal. No, honestly.
And then, if you really want just
comparison,
a nightcap, watch American Splendor. It's not necessarily a documentary, but it's got a lot of the people who they're acting in the movie. It's meta as fuck. Let's just put it that way. It's once you see Toby, the triple bill of Daniel Johnston, Crumb, and Toby. Yes, everything is absolutely normal.
American Splendor, which was
Harvey Picar. Harvey Picar.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and his comic that he put out, American Splendor, about essentially his life in Cleveland.
I was thinking about what was the movie about the guy making the horror film.
Oh, God.
About the Coven.
Yeah, and it kept, he had a funny way of saying vodka or something like that. I can't.
Yeah, it's a funny way of pronouncing a lot of things.
It was so low budget. Like, the documentary cost more than his horror movie he made.
And it was called American something. American
Film? American something like that?
Yeah, anyway.
Unregimented. ChristopherMedia.net.
Are you ready?
To find solutions.
Ready.
For new opportunity.
Ready.
To take charge of the future. St. Joseph's College in Brooklyn offers a safe, flexible, and affordable education so you can be ready for what's next. And we make it easy to transfer, so you can stay on course to complete your degree. Attend an upcoming virtual transfer and adult enrollment day to see how. Register at sjcny.edu/VK transfer events.
Are you ready?
St. Joseph's College.
Ready.
Set.
Joe's.
Hear from me, four-time Olympic gold medalist Michael Johnson on the Data Brilliant podcast from data leaders Click. I talked to Click's Joe Dos Santos about the role of data in my running career and in my business today as I help prepare future athletes. Tune in to hear us as we discuss the psychological and personal qualities needed to be a champion and how data can help you recognize what it takes to win. Search Data Brilliant on your preferred podcast platform to listen now. Hear from me, four-time Olympic gold medalist Michael Johnson on the Data Brilliant podcast from data leaders Click. I talked to Click's Joe Dos Santos about the role of data in my running career and in my business today as I help prepare future athletes. Tune in to hear us as we discuss the psychological and personal qualities needed to be a champion and how data can help you recognize what it takes to win. Search Data Brilliant on your preferred podcast platform to listen now.
ChristopherMedia.net. Unregimented.
Anyway, hey, speaking of films, though, We both saw the same film this week. We watched It Chapter 2.
Yes.
So if this is only Chapter 2, how many more of these movies are they going to make?
Well,
Are there like 40 chapters in that book?
That book was 1,000 pages long. I think it was a lot more than 40. I think that book was broke up into 2 books with interludes in between.
Yeah, that book was really long, and it's no wonder it took 2 movies. Even both of them. Well, the first one's over like 2 hours, isn't it?
Yeah.
And this one's damn near 3.
And supposedly there's a ultimate cut that's going to be released on home video where the director had from beginning to end as one long movie, and he's going to put in the footage that they said he had to take out for running length. So kind of like what Peter Jackson did with Lord of the Rings with the extended cuts.
Okay. Well, I hope some of that is putting back in, what's the mullet guy's?
Henry Bowers.
Yeah. They should have put more Bowers in there. I mean, I don't know. That's. I know the movie's not perfect, but let me start off with saying I really enjoyed it.
Really? Because you told me you fell asleep during the first one.
I did. I fell asleep halfway through the first movie, and I don't know why it didn't do it for me, and maybe I just wasn't in the mood for it. My daughter expressed interest in watching it, and I said, yeah, sure, why not? And I watched it with her and ended up actually really enjoying it. And then I asked her if she wanted to go see this one in the theater, and she jumped at the chance. And yeah, I enjoyed this movie more so than the last one, which seems to be the opposite of the popular consensus out there.
It's not that I didn't enjoy the second one. It's just the first one. I understand with a 1,000-page book and you're looking to do 2 movies, you're going to cut out a lot of stuff.
Sure.
But the pacing of the first one seemed like it was truer to the book. This one, it seemed like because they kept going with the flashbacks, it rushed some of the pacing at the beginning with getting to know the adults. And that scene in the Chinese restaurant was supposed to, like in the book, that is where you get to know them as adults. And it felt like in 5 minutes, it was over with, even though the scene was more like 10, 15 minutes long. And I was just like, wow, okay. And then what struck me is there's a part in the book where Stephen King is writing in the mindset of the creature, it, and the creature's thinking about how, these kids have come back and now they're adults, and as kids, it's easier to terrify kids because their fears are so, visceral, and, the thing under the bed, the thing in the basement. Whereas adults, it's like, oh, I can't pay my mortgage. I'm going to have a heart attack. I'm going to have a stroke. My parents are going to die. What if my wife leaves me? Their fears get more complex. And I just felt like they missed the opportunity to play off that. I think they kind of touched on it. By the way, big spoilers. If you don't want to hear about it, I don't know if it's going to be our last subject, but skip around. But yeah, okay, then you can go ahead and skip the rest of this. I think they kind of touched on it with Richie and strongly hinting at the fact that he was gay and in the closet. And when the clown was like, I'll tell everyone your secret. To me, that was how, in the book, that was more representative of how Pennywise was attacking them as adults. It kind of worked with Bev's character when she went back to her dad's house. And then, this isn't even implied. I think it's just flat out said. They just don't go into graphic detail that her father was molesting her, and, the monster picked up on that and played off of that when she went back to her old apartment she used to live in as a child with her dad. But the thing with Eddie, going to the pharmacist and his mom getting like some weird Mengele experiment put on her, I was like, I don't see where that's coming from. How does that play into his fear? Eddie's fear was always that he really wasn't sick and his mom was making him sick, basically Munchausen by proxy. And that deep down he knew it, but he loved his mom so much he didn't want to disappoint her and go, Mom, I'm not sick, leave me alone. Yeah. And he carried that fear into adulthood to the point where he married basically a doppelganger of his mother, which they hinted at, but you never saw his wife in the movie. And I mean, Ben. Okay, he lost weight, but I mean, like, did you have to pick an actor with like a fucking 8-pack?
Right.
Like, you know,
that was a bit
dude.
extreme.
You know, like I get it. I will say this: they did an excellent job of picking actors who looked like their kids' counterparts.
They did.
Could look like when they were growing up. Because there was 2 scenes where they superimposed from a kid to an adult. One was Eddie, and I think the other was Ben. And it's like, holy shit, that could be that guy grown up.
Yeah.
So I mean, that was good casting, and it's got a terrific cast. Really does.
It does. Yeah, it really does. I think Bill Hader was great in it. I think, you know, as far as matching the adults to the kids, I think they should have popped some contacts into Jessica Chastain's eyes, because the girl who plays the younger version of her has these brilliant light blue eyes. But other than that, I mean, that's a really small nitpick. You know, so the things that I didn't really like about it, I didn't like the fact that they cut Henry Bauer's part down so much that there wasn't really a reason for him to be in the movie.
Yeah, because in the book, he actually took Mike out. I mean, he didn't kill him, but he put him in the ER to the point where Mike couldn't go into the sewers with him at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And when he stabbed Eddie in the face, I was like, oh, okay, so they're switching it up. But then, you know, just like in Fight Club where he shoots himself through the cheek, but yet he's fine. I'm like, come on, dude, you just took an 8-inch fucking switchblade in the face. Like,
right.
Like, seriously. And you're not the tough guy of the group either. You know, you're the weakling of the group, you know.
I thought they leaned a little too heavily on the flashbacks.
Oh, and real quick, the flashbacks. Did you pick this up that they did some digital fuckery with some of those? It's in other words, it's obvious they filmed some of those scenes after they had already filmed and released the first one, because there was some times I was like, wait a minute, these kids are much older now than they were in the first one.
Yeah, what was the fat kid's name?
Ben.
Young Ben definitely had some Grand Moff Tarkin vibe going on.
Yeah, and he was thinner in the second one in the flashbacks than he was in the first movie.
Yeah.
So I mean, obviously, I mean he's a little pudgy kid, obviously, but he was losing some of his baby fat as he gets a little older. And
yeah,
the kid that played Eddie, they must have done something to his voice, because I was like, wait, what? It almost sounded like when you hear auto-tune, once you know what to look for, you can spot it a mile away. I heard some sort of like they did something. They did some altering of his voice. But I mean, you have to. I get it. It's a small gripe. It's a small gripe on my part.
Yeah, it didn't. It bothered me a little bit, but it didn't ruin anything for me. So my gripes with the overall structure, though, involve a series of movies that I don't think I would ever see. I think ideally, for the story that they wanted to tell, I'd like to see 3 different movies, like a trilogy, rather than splitting it into 2. And I understand why they split it into 2, but I think it should be one movie about kids versus Pennywise, another movie about adults coming back to Derry, getting stalked and hunted by what's his name, mullet guy.
Oh yeah, Henry Bowers.
By Henry Bowers, and remembering, you know, and so then you get the middle movie being a mix of then and now. You know, they're coming back, they're remembering, they're being stalked by their old bully, and just have it be that. Like, you don't even need Pennywise in that movie. Then Pennywise comes back in the third movie, and we can just concentrate on exploring the fears of the adults and how they stand up to Pennywise. But that means that you have a whole movie where you don't have a whole lot of Pennywise, and I don't think they could sell that. But I think story structure-wise, that's how it should be broken up.
Yeah, and I get the feeling that from what I heard about the stuff that he's going to add back into the extended cut, that there was a lot more of, because in the book, Mike stays in Derry. I mean, in the book and the movie, Mike stays in Derry, and becomes basically a historian of the town, and the whole town is based around what was it like? It's supposed to be like a million years in the past. Basically, the creature It is an interdimensional being that crashed into this area before it was inhabited by people, and it just hibernated, and its influenced how the town is. And the town is like a town that every 27 years, this creature wakes up. Well, in the book, it's a female. They never really say explicitly whether it's a female or male in the movie, but the creature wakes up, feeds, and then goes back to hibernate for another 27 years. And the creature's evil influence is all through the town, all through the town's history. And he said that he had filmed a few scenes explaining, like, the different times in the cycle he had come back and what had happened. And the studio was like, no, you're going to confuse people. Like, we want to make a movie to where they can watch the movie and understand it. You want to make a movie to where the people are going to need to read the book as supplemental material. And so I guess the compromise was release this, and then he can do what he wants on the home video release later down the line.
Yeah.
So that might be what you're talking about. Might go that way.
Maybe, but I can't imagine. I can't imagine the extra footage giving Bowers a better part of the story. And I mean, there's just little things that he didn't. The writer or the director or whoever ultimately responsible, they just didn't follow through on. I mean, why even introduce the thing with the lights if they weren't going to follow through on that in any way, right? So, what's her name? The girl,
Bev.
Bev gets trapped in the lights in the first movie. Remember the 3 circling lights?
The dead lights, yep.
The dead lights, right? And it gives her the sight. And she has some kind of dream about the guy who killed himself, right? She has a little vision. And then she mentions that she's seen all their deaths, but they don't ever follow up on that. She doesn't have another vision. It's never spoken of again, and only mentioned in this movie as seeming to be explanation for why Bill Hader's floating, and he gets trapped in the deadlights at the end. Again, which they do nothing with.
Yeah, it did seem kind of tacked on that she got in the Stephen King universe, it would be called The Shining.
Right.
And then, nothing came of it.
The Shining should have given them their edge, smoking the peace pipe with some weird Indians. And even that ended up being bullshit.
Which, by the way, I was like, wow, they really, really condensed a large part of the book about that clubhouse and the ritual they went through to have the vision into, I met some Indians and smoked some wacky tobacco, and everything makes sense now.
Yeah. Which, I mean, as much as they pave over that section of it and just kind of dash it off, of course, that was the exact moment where my daughter decided to get up and use the bathroom. Then she comes back and is like, what I miss? I'm like, there's Indians or something? Like, I don't know. Look, if it comes up later, I'll brief you on it. But
shit. I'm just imagining you going, you know how when I send you to bed and it smells like skunk? That's what happened when you were in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Well, and then the whole, and the thing
that
was,
all happens like.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, that all happened. I remember when my daughter got up to use the bathroom, it was when that scene was starting where when Mike drugs the other dude, and then tells him about the plan and shows him the leather vase or whatever the fuck it is, and then they cut to the rest of the group talking about Bev's Shining. And so when she came back and sat down, I was like trying to explain to her what she had missed. And also while she was shushing me the whole time because I was talking too loud. I finally gave up, and I'm like, if any of this shit comes up again, I'll explain it to you. But I'm glad I didn't waste my breath trying to explain Bev's Shining, because it doesn't ever fucking come back up. And no amount of footage being put back in there is going to make that resolve in any way, unless he actually does have an alternate ending up his sleeve.
Well, if you said you've read the book, so you know that the turtle was kind of like the cosmic opposite of the it creature. He was, everything that's good, while the it creature is everything that's evil.
I hadn't remembered until you mentioned it, but yeah.
He did say that he did film a scene with the turtle while the kids were in the deadlights. When they come back as adults, and in the book, it's Bill who got trapped in the deadlights the first time as kids. Then it's Bill and Richie as adults. The turtle had died. And, so he said he filmed a scene that would have been in the first movie that would have expanded on what she saw when she was in the deadlights. And to me, it seems like because they cut the whole thing with the turtle, which gave a lot of exposition about, its origin and everything. Mm-hmm. They just said, what can we do that's kind of Stephen King-ish? Oh, give her The Shining. It kind of feels like they did that instead.
Right.
Like it's an Easter egg for all the Stephen King nerds out there, which, by the way, there were quite a few of. And my favorite one was Bill grew up to be a writer, and everyone shits on him during the whole movie about he can't write an ending worth of shit.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest criticisms leveled at Stephen King. Uh-huh. And at one point in the movie, Bill spots his bike from his childhood, goes into the pawn shop, and it's Stephen King, who's the proprietor of the pawn shop. And he goes, "Hey, aren't you that writer Bill Denbrough?" Yeah. He's like, yeah, I like your books, but you can't write an ending worth of shit.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, so Stephen King's finally accepting you suck at endings. Okay. Like, to the point where he's actually willing to make fun of it,
Yeah. Well, I feel like I should talk about, because I did claim to enjoy this movie and then spent 15 minutes ripping it apart. But it's more out of, like, it could have been really, really good. A few tweaks, and this could have been exactly what I wanted. It was really close. I don't go in for horror films in general, but this one I thought was very effective. I loved all the special effects. I loved all the different aspects of Pennywise, especially the old lady. That whole scene where Jessica Chastain goes back to, where Bev goes back to her looking for her father's place and finds the old woman, and she's scuttling around. I love that scene.
That was creepy and amusing at the same time.
It balanced it just right. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
And there's a lot of that I loved. I loved the different concepts that they had for it. Even the tropes. Like, he follows the kid into the Hall of Mirrors. I'm like, okay, here we go again. But that fucking worked for me. When he's smashing his head against the glass and just smiling, and then finally breaks through, like, all that shit worked for me. I thought, for being, I don't even know, I mean, like, an almost 3-hour long horror film, it was paced amazingly well. There was like one moment when they're starting to ramp up for that final scene that I'm like, this is dragging a little bit. And then I promptly forgot about it.
Well, the first thing that stuck out to me was the beginning of the movie with the Dairy Days Carnival.
Yeah.
And the gay couple.
I loved that scene.
I was shocked.
Loved everything about that scene.
I was shocked how true to the source material they stayed, because it's like,
was it?
It is 2009. Well, I mean, the book takes place in 1984.
Right.
And, for you youngsters, that's when dinosaurs roamed the earth. But, I mean, the word fag was thrown around a lot more freely and with very little shame put to anyone who said it whatsoever in 84. And I'm not talking calling your buddy a fag because he did something stupid. I'm talking looking at a gay person going, faggot.
1984 is when that shit was really ramping up, because now they're, quote-unquote, disease-spreading fags.
Yeah, because it was, for y'all that don't know, they used to call, when AIDS first came out, gay cancer.
Yes.
It said it puts you in the mindset of the country at the time.
If you want to know a little bit about that, tune into season 3 of The Deuce.
Oh, shit, I still got to watch that. God damn it. Still got to finish.
The premiere was the other day.
But anyways, it was almost spot on. The guy's beating him up, throwing him into the river, and how he keeps bobbing and coming up. Then he sees Pennywise, and he's drowning, and he's panicking. So he just reaches for him, just like out of desperation. And even how Pennywise was holding him with his arm up, and he bites into his rib cage. That is exactly how it happened in the book while his lover watched. And I was like, God damn, that is like beat for beat. And that's when I was like, okay, all right, I'm on board. I can do this. You know what I'm saying?
And the
like,
balloons come out of nowhere.
It's exact same thing happened. Exact same thing happened in the book.
It's interesting because I've read the book in like 1989, so it's not exactly fresh in my memory.
That and then now this scene wasn't in the book, but to me this scene did a good job of explaining why Pennywise approaches the kids like he does. When the little girl goes under the bleachers and he's talking to her and he's like, I'm going to count to 3 and make your birthmark go away. And he starts smiling and you see him start to drool.
Yeah.
In the book, the reason he scares children is because fear releases chemicals in their brain and in their body that taste good to him. So when he eats them, it's like throwing seasoning on a steak. And it's like, they did that in the first one, but it was when he was in a drain. I was like, is that drool or is it just water dripping off him because it's raining and he's in a drain? No, it was drool. So I'm like, okay, that was cool. That was
that was another one of my favorite scenes. It's the girl under the bleacher.
Yeah, and they went all the way with it. Like they showed him chomp into her head, and I didn't expect. I expected him to at the camera and in a hard cut. No, I mean they didn't dwell on it, but
yeah,
he got her, and it was like, oh shit. They
There's
just
no
killed
question.
a kid. Yeah. And not Georgie, because that's the only kid I expected to see die for both of these movies, because you kind of have to show that. That's the whole catalyst that starts everything. But yeah, was it Bill Skarsgård?
Yeah.
Yeah. From the weird timeless kid from Castle Rock.
No.
I think he did a bang up job as Pennywise.
It's like he was made for that role. I mean, first of all, that eye thing is the wandering eye is not a special effect. Like Bill Skarsgård can do that with his eye. Actually, there was somebody had shared it on Twitter. It was just 2 pictures. One of Bill Hader talking to Skarsgård. And then in the next picture, you see like Bill jumping back away from him. You see Bill Hader jumping away from Skarsgård. And it was captioned as this was the moment when Bill Hader went up to him, asked him, hey, how did they do that thing with your eye? That's so creepy. Is that they have a contact lens or something like that? And he's just like, nope, and just makes his eye go off to the side.
Yeah, that'd kind of be like, wow, dude. All right. That's some Ripley's Believe It or Not shit back in the day.
Performance-wise, I thought, I don't have any complaints. I don't think anybody was a real dog in it. I thought everyone gave a great performance. I think Bill Hader was amongst the better ones. And
one thing that did bother me, not about the movie, but the reaction to it, was a very small group of reviewers who fall on the woke crowd got upset when Mike was in the library and the scrapbook fell open, because in the book, Henry Bowers and his dad hated Mike because they were black. I mean, there's liberal use of the N-bomb coming from those characters towards Mike and his family in the book. And his parents are alive in the book. Well, obviously in the first movie they show that they died in some sort of fire. Well, about halfway through the movie, when Pennywise is fucking with Mike, the scrapbook falls, it opens up to the clipping, and it says 2 crackheads die in fire. Well, of course, the woke crowd, they got to be crackheads because he's black. And I'm like, did you finish watching the movie? Because later in the movie, he opens that, after everything's done, he opens the scrapbook to the same page. Yeah. And it says 2 people die in house fire.
Yeah.
That was Pennywise fucking with him. Like seriously, you're going to take exception to that? We can kill children. We can eat homosexuals underneath a bridge. But that's what triggered you. Come on. And I was like, you're not even. That's the type of criticism. If you're not going to watch the movie that close, then don't do a fucking review of it. That's just all I got. That just irritated me a little bit because I'm like, that's an unwarranted criticism of the movie.
This is the same type of people who go, "Oh, I don't like that Christopher Walken. He always plays really bad, evil people." Well,
it's called acting.
Yeah. That doesn't make him a bad actor. It actually makes him a good actor.
Yeah. Do you think? Yeah. So you wouldn't have Sir Anthony Hopkins over for dinner because you're afraid he's going to eat you? Get the fuck out of here. You know what I'm saying? Like, but yeah. But that criticism to me was like one of the little touches that if you're just watching a movie casually and not really paying attention, you'd have missed. So obviously that tells you how deeply I think these reviewers were watching the movie. But it added to it because it's like, yes, that is the type of shit Pennywise would do. And that plays into fucking with adult fears, go back, tap into their fears as a kid. And, I mean, obviously in the movie, it portrays Mike as like, what, maybe 4 or 5 tops when his parents die because he was helpless to help him. And I mean, maybe in his mind, he was like, did they die doing something they weren't supposed to? When really it was just, a house fire, like it was said. It was, I think it even, if you bothered to look at it, I think you could see it said something about electrical underneath the headline.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, once again, disregard the criticism of it. Just a little touch like that goes a long way. And that's something that in a lot of Stephen King movies, you can tell that the writers and directors go, I want to make a horror movie. Stephen King is the first thing that most people think of when we say horror these days, as far as modern writers. Let's secure the rights to this and then just do it. It's not made by people who actually respect the source material, like Castle Rock.
Yeah.
Or anything that Frank Darabont has ever done by Stephen King, The Shawshank Redemption, Green Mile, The Mist, stuff like that. This is as a pretty big Stephen. I mean, when I was a kid, I was a huge Stephen King fan. I'm not anywhere close to it now. If this come out when I was like 13, these movies come out then. Oh shit! I'd have been obsessed. Because I was obsessed with the miniseries, and I tried to sit down and watch that. Oh my God. That is let's just put it this way. Thank God Tim Curry's in it.
Yeah.
Because that was the saving grace.
Yes, the only one.
And John Ritter was in it, and he played Ben as an adult, and being a fat kid when I was a kid and read it, that was my favorite character, but it was like, huh? How do you fuck up John Ritter? But you got him, but they did. But
right. Well, that's the thing with this movie and a lot of stuff that we're getting now. I mean, we're going to get even more. There's going to be another season of Castle Rock. CBS All Access is doing a Stephen King related. Oh, they're doing The Stand.
Oh, we got to talk about that later on another episode. I just got the cast list. They fucked that up a little bit.
Oh, really?
Whatever. Well, we'll talk about it off.
I'm hearing from the true Trekkies that they're fucking up Star Trek in a lot of ways. So I don't have a whole lot of faith. But okay, so maybe that's not a good example. But we're getting a lot of Stephen King stuff, and a lot of it is adhering true to the source, not in the text, but in the feel, right? Because that's what Stephen King excels at. Sure, he's not great at writing endings. So what? He manages to balance all these elements in his book in a way that just has a feel that very few authors can, put you in that world. And that's part of what I liked about it, is that I was in that world.
Yeah, and I think this new batch of movies that are coming out, like you had good ones that came out years ago, Stand By Me, Misery, but they existed almost in a vacuum by themselves. Whereas pretty much in the early 80s, Stephen King started writing and creating his own universe with its own rules and connecting everything together.
That's right. But they could interpret, when the story was really simple, it was easy to interpret into a movie. When you start getting more, there's a big difference between Misery and even like Cujo and Carrie compared to works like The Stand and It and Tommyknockers and even Pet Sematary. Like Misery is just about, humans being shitty to other humans, where there's a whole nother world to those other books. Once you start getting into the bigger world building, that's where they've traditionally failed. That's why the early adaptations of It and what was they've done The Stand before, right? Or was that The Gunslinger? Or did they?
No, they did The Stand, and
yeah,
it outside of a handful of actors in it, it was. It's rough to go back and watch, man.
Yeah. The Dark Half, failed.
See, that failed, but you know what? That was, to me, not a bad movie. It was just, it's a hard book to film because how do you?
It only scratches the surface of what goes on in that book. Dark Half was always one of my favorites.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And that's like hardcore psychological thriller.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, like, there's a lot in the Dark Half in authors that I've enjoyed since, like Irving Welsh and what's his name, Fight Club dude,
Chuck Palahniuk.
Yeah, that guy.
Well,
where just putting you in the head of a crazy person.
Yeah, and the Dark Half is almost. Obviously, it's about a writer's pseudonym coming to life after he tries to quote unquote kill him off, and that happened. King had a pseudonym, Richard Bachman.
Yeah,
and all of Richard Bachman's books, except for Thinner, pretty much avoided the spooky supernatural stuff. It was much more grounded in reality. A few of them were in like dystopian futures. Others were just people losing their fucking minds. And the Dark Half almost feels like a Richard Bachman book. And I love the Richard Bachman books. If you listen to any of the Stephen King podcasts I've listened to, apparently I am in the minority. Most people hate those books. So that's why I enjoyed the Dark Half as much as I did. And he also through that turned me on to, because a lot of the writers that he said inspired him in that book were crime writers. Guys like Shane Stevens and guys I would have never even fucking thought to pick up a book by.
I can kind of see where they're coming from, because from my memory of the Richard Bachman stuff, what you don't get out of those stories is the character development. What you do get, though, is this feeling that Stephen King is just really letting his imagination go wherever it can go.
Yeah.
And I think that was part of using that pseudonym. It's like, people want to pigeonhole Stephen King into a certain type of writer. So maybe this allows me to do crazier stuff.
Well, it's to the point where he'd already been, his pseudonym had already been exposed to be him by the time the movie The Running Man come out.
Yeah.
And people still don't even understand that. Granted, it's like The Lawnmower Man. They took an idea of Stephen King's and then changed it into what they wanted to. But it's still at heart, it was birthed from his story. I think if you even watch The Running Man, it says based on the novel by Richard Bachman. It does not even mention Stephen King. And when I tell people, I'm like, if you read the book, it's a lot more prescient than even the fucking movie is about this nonsense that we're going through with reality television and these reality game shows and shit these days. Also,
I don't think that at the time that they were putting out that movie, Running Man, Stephen King was putting Stephen King on the title of your movie wasn't necessarily a sell.
Yeah, that was post.
It was very right. That's exactly what I was thinking. It was very uneven. Some of those movies stuck with us. They were, like Carrie and Cujo had moments that people will remember, but wasn't necessarily classics. They weren't great movies. They were fun movies. Maximum Overdrive is kind of ridiculous. Christine was ridiculous.
Maximum Overdrive.
Pet Cemetery.
Maximum Overdrive, except for Zelda, is absolutely 80s cringe fest. The original Pet Cemetery. Zelda, to this day, it's like there's just something uncomfortable with the actor's portrayal of that. Even more so than, and they actually got a 12-year-old girl to play Zelda in the newer one that just came out. Mm-hmm. But it's just not as scary because it's ironically, as much as they switched up the shit in the book in the original movie, they kept the Zelda shit pretty much almost beat for beat how it was in the book, and that's what made it scary. But Maximum Overdrive is just Stephen King coked out of his mind, given millions of dollars by a movie studio going, "You're Stephen King, make us a movie." And the best scene in it is when he goes up to the ATM and tries to take money out, and it says, "Fuck off, asshole." And he goes, "Honey, this machine just called me an asshole." But I mean, I almost can get a Coke secondhand buzz from watching Maximum Overdrive.
Maximum Overdrive, I feel like, is the movie equivalent of Neil Young's album Trans.
Okay, all right. I can see that.
Wasn't that his electronic album?
Yes.
Yes. I was thinking of he put out a double live album. It was with him with Crazy Horse where they did all the regular stuff. And then the EP that was the second album was literally an EP of feedback from their live shows. And that's what I was thinking. I can't remember what it was. It was like something and then something. But I was just like, yeah, I can see it. A little self-indulgent. Well,
we should wrap up, or else we're going to have to start naming this a Stephen King podcast.
We'll get sued by the Consequences Sound Stephen King podcast at that point.
Yeah. I've been reading about the debates. Well, you guys were talking about a movie I haven't seen. We'll talk about that next
really?
week.
Yeah, what's happening in the debates? Anything interesting?
Andrew Yang's going to give away money. I don't know how that's not buying votes. But,
no, but explain it. It's not the $1,000 per person deal. It's...
No, it is. It's $1,000 per family, and he's having a raffle, and he's going to give it to 10 families for a year.
Oh, okay.
Biden got heckled, and Beto's going to take away our assault weapons. Those are like the finer bullet points.
Do you say fuck?
No.
No F-bombs?
They were all warned against swearing at the beginning.
Beto, I'm looking at you.
So who would have thought they had to warn the Democratic candidates not to swear? But yet Trump went through the debates and never was warned not to swear.
Oh, God, who is it? Cheney? Was it Cheney that said fuck? And it was like news for a week.
Oh shit! I'm not sure.
That's 2004, and that was right in the middle of that's a year I'm still piecing together.
That's to bring it back to Stephen King. That's his dead zone.
2002 to about 2007. We're still piecing that together. But yeah, so I guess it's time to go. So I'll just remind you we are on Twitter at UnregimentedPod. The email address is unregimented@christophermedia.net. We are on Spotify, Spreaker.com. We're on so many platforms. I'm having a brain fart. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, ChristopherMedia.net. I'm sure I missed something. But check us out every Saturday. Check out all the other shows at ChristopherMedia.net. And we'll see you next week.
See ya.
Later, guys.
unregimented. ChristopherMedia.net.
As much as life has changed over the last year, you're still pretty busy. So consider convenient COVID-19 testing from Quest. Get the same tests hospitals use without a doctor visit. Simply order online, select from drive-through or at-home options, and get results sent securely to your phone or computer. It's a great fit for your busy life. With over 25 million COVID-19 tests processed, you can count on Quest. So order your test today at questcovid19.com.
ChristopherMedia.net. If you like this show, please tell a friend. Please make sure to rate and comment on all your favorite Christopher Media shows. Please follow us on Twitter and like and share us on Facebook. You can subscribe to all ChristopherMedia.net shows for free on ChristopherMedia.net. Thank you for listening, and thank you for visiting ChristopherMedia.net. Thank you for visiting ChristopherMedia.net.